This show is sponsored by Den 10 Insurance Services, helping businesses get the right insurance for all their insurance needs. Visit den10.io to get a quote. DENTEN.io. And remember, when you buy an insurance policy from Den 10, you're giving back on a global scale. Hello, all my entrepreneurs and business leaders, and welcome to the Michael Esposito Show, where I interview titans of industry in order to inform, educate, and inspire you to be great. My guest today started her journey in helping victims of sexual and violent crimes at a young age of 11. Today, she is a visionary and transformative advocate for community, thought leadership, and social justice. From interning to now the CEO, she is a mission-driven and results-oriented executive leader. With over a decade of hands-on nonprofit leadership experience in human services, she thrives in engaging and coordinating key stakeholders internally and across the community, working alongside an amazing team striving towards building a stronger, safer Hudson Valley and world. Please welcome the Chief Executive Officer for Family Services, Leah Feldman.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was a beautiful introduction.
You're welcome. Well, you did all the work. Yeah.
No wonder I'm so tired. Jeez.
I am so honored to have you in here with the kind of work that you do. As you just mentioned, you saw my Den 10 flyer here and seeing our agency's commitment to nonprofits. And so I am very aware of the work that goes behind the scenes in an organization like yours, and understand that there's just a tremendous amount of time and energy that's spent in bringing together employees, but volunteers, and then awareness to the cause that you serve. So it is an honor and a pleasure to have you in today.
Thank you. And I was thinking the same, because sometimes when I hear those phrases of entrepreneurship, or, you know, you almost think as a nonprofit leader that that's not your bucket. Right. Like we often talk on different types of shows or podcasts, but the truth is it all comes back to those powerful tenets of leadership that anybody brings into their life when they know their life's calling, right? Whatever that is that you want to do. So we are all together in trying to become the best leaders we can for the world, right? So I'm really honored to be here as well. Thank you.
Yeah. And I think it's like, even, you know, in the bio that I read from about you says Hudson Valley and it ends there, but I added world because I feel like every change that is made in a community affects everywhere, affects the world. Because like if you can, you know, change the life of one person, how many lives can that person change? And that leaves our communities. And so it's not just the Hudson Valley, it expands to everywhere. Even though the services is dedicated to the Hudson Valley region, what you're doing in the Hudson Valley region is changing the world.
Sure. And I was wondering if that was actually my bio, or if you had added that, because I'm going to add it now, because that is so true. You know, when you are doing work, you know, that deals with human beings, right? And some suffering and wellness of humans. You have to be inspired, and you have to believe you're making the world a better place, or else why would you get up and come to work every day, right? You have to know that why, not just about what you're doing every day, but why you're doing it. And yeah, of course it's about a better world. So Thank you for adding that. A little inspiration for me.
Yeah, I like to tweak it up a little bit. So on that topic of why, you have a very inspiring story, and you know I mentioned it in your intro about at the age of 11, and you shared the story with me, and I think you know your whole journey in this space really started there, and there's so many ties to where you are now at Family Services in your life that we could speak to. So I'd love if you can share a little bit about that story with our audience.
Sure. So, you know, my calling in life, I really feel is ending violence against women. It's something, justice and, you know, women's rights are something that have always just kind of lit my fire, right? Has always inspired me. And, you know, I think about all the time why or how I got into this work. And I can remember back to when I was in middle school, and this was the story I shared with you, that I was out with a friend of mine, and we were, playing around in our neighborhood, and we were with a group of people, and I had lost track of her, and went back to her house, just waiting to see, as kids run out. Well, not much nowadays, but in those days we used to like play outside and stuff. So get back out there, kids. But she, a couple hours later, came back, and I had been waiting for her at her house, and she said to me, she looked disheveled, and she was with another boy that we were in school with, and I felt kind of awkward. And then he left, and I said to her, "Hey, what's going on?" And she told me that, like in words that an 11-year-old can say, and I can't even remember what they were, was that he had assaulted her, that he had raped her. And I, like 11 years old, no idea what it meant. We pulled out the yellow pages, which something that you might not even know about these days, but and we looked up the word rape, and we found a hotline that was for rape crisis, and we called that hotline, and we spoke to someone on the phone, and that person said, "You should really go to the hospital." And so we went to her mother, and we said, "Listen, this is what happened, and we think we need to go to the hospital." And her parents couldn't, I don't think that they could take it in, right? They were unable to react in a way that she needed at the time. So I walked down to my house, and I told my parents, and my parents said, "All right, we're going to make something happen here, and we're going to get her the help she needs." So there was a long process of, police, and, we were having to work with the school because they sat next to each other in class, and so that whole process happened, and I lost touch with that individual. And many years later, I was sitting on the bus, I think graduating, probably a senior in high school at that point, and she sat down next to me, and she said, "I just want to let you know that if you hadn't, believed me or made something happen for me that day, I don't think I'd still be here today." And I remember just in my, 17-year-old head at that time thinking, geez, I got to do this. I have to touch people, like, for a living. I have to ensure justice. I have to make sure that people are heard, that people are helped, that people get what they deserve in terms of the respect and dignity. And then I don't think I knew that was going to be my career, but I went away to college, and I found my way to a women's center where I had some great mentors and, did some great internships. And then I moved back to the Hudson Valley with my parents, and after college, and just kind of said, I want to work with victims of domestic violence. And somebody said to me, well, check out Family Services. And it happened to be that hotline that I had called all those years ago was the Family Services hotline. And that's now where I'm the CEO. So I just think it found me, right, that this work. And in my journey, I started with Family Services as an advocate, working with victims of domestic violence and sexual assault, and answering the hotlines in the middle of the night, and going to the hospital and working with the police. And I realized fairly quickly that my skills were better suited in policy, management type work. So I found myself into some policy work, and then into some management work, and just always had this vision and goal of, I wanted to be the CEO. I started saying that, geez, now that I am the CEO, people say to me all the time, I remember 10 years ago when you told me you wanted to be the CEO and you were like 20 years old. I'm like, I know. So it just is a kind of a lesson in, if you manifest something enough, that it can happen for you. So now, I had this goal to be the CEO, and now that I am, we provide a whole host of services, family services. I like to say that we help people survive and thrive, right? So we have a variety of services. We touch many different communities. But I sit in my seat now as CEO, and I say, and I remember wholeheartedly why I came to this work, and, my origin story and my why. And I just feel so blessed that I get to do that every day, right? Because this is not an easy job. It's very stressful. It brings lots of, you see a lot of suffering, lots of challenges. Just nonprofit in general has lots of challenges. But to remember that my why. And, thank you for letting me share that story, because now I remember even more. And I'm going to go back to my office today even more inspired. But I find as a leader, people don't really care about what you do. People care about why you do it. And so whenever I can inspire people with my why, is really special for me. So thank you.
Well, you're very welcome. I think the why is one of the most important pieces to anything we do in life, whether it's leadership or, I speak a lot about public speaking and finding your why. Like, why are you speaking? That's a lot of times people, when they're worried or nervous about public speaking, it's because they don't know why they're speaking. But when they can uncover why they're speaking, it's like, oh, all right, yeah, of course I could get in front of an audience and share this, because it means so much to them. And when you shared this story with me, I mean, even just now hearing it again, and I feel the emotions of it. I have some questions inside of it, because I feel like some of the work that you do today is work that helps people in these situations. And I think about the parents. So I'm the father of 2 young daughters. Den10 is named after them, Denise and Tenley. And right now they're 8 and 6 years old. And they did play outside this morning. I'm proud to say is that, whenever they ask, can we play outside? It's yes. In all fairness, we don't live in a big community or neighborhood to where I'm worried about them in the streets at all. They're out playing outside is right in our backyard, and they're safe in those confines. So we think, and that leads me to my questions here, and the work that you do, in that this young girl's parents, and they're not knowing what to do. I'm interested in, one, maybe not just them, but what does that look like for anybody when someone, because people talk about denial, people talk about belief, but what does it look like when a parent doesn't know what to do? And then how can you help them realize? I mean, you went to your parents and they were probably integral in helping them realize to some extent. What does all of that look like from that side of it?
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack there, and bless you with, the responsibility of raising 2 young girls. That's a lot. That's a lot, and you have a really important job. So we can talk about that too. But one thing I tell people, everyone I talk to, and anyone that will listen, is the whole concept of starting by believing. When somebody tells us something has happened to them, it is human nature to question that and ask yourself, what were they doing wrong? Because you don't want to believe it could happen to you or someone you love, right? So if you think about it, if somebody says, I've been assaulted or sexually assaulted, you might ask yourself, well, why were you alone with that boy? Or why were you out at night? Or what were you wearing? It would not be the same scenario if I shared with you, my friend was killed in a car accident. No, you wouldn't ask, well, why was she driving? Right? So it's this whole concept of those things that we fear, we try to ask, what was happening. So the idea of start by believing is such an important tenet and especially as the mental health, nationally, the mental health crisis is growing in the world. When somebody tells you something, your best bet is to just start by saying, I believe you, right? And that, if I could talk to parents today, or especially parents raising young girls, I would say that would be the number one thing. If somebody shares something with you, is that I believe you and I'm here for you. We all bring things into our world as parents. This past weekend, I was potty training my 2-year-old, and I realized at certain points, I couldn't do it because I was bringing too much of my stuff, and I would tap myself outside to my husband, you got to handle this one, right? Because I was bringing my feelings of perfection and right. We all bring that to as parents, and we have to learn how to just check ourselves and not bring ourselves. And so some of the work we do at Family Services, we work with parents, and we actually work with parents who are at risk of having their children removed from the home. And that's often due to abuse or neglect. And what we do is we go into the home and we try to prevent that removal if we can safe. If families can stay together safely, we want them to stay together. And we work from the premise is that we know that parents love their children, right? But sometimes parents just need a little help, right? They need a little education. They need to develop nurturing skills because they're bringing into their parenting how they were parented, right? So we help parents understand why they may be behaving how they're behaving. And so I take that same philosophy with this situation. Who knows what that girl's parents had been through, right? Maybe that mother had been through an experience herself of a sexual assault that she had never processed, right? That this is an assumption, but we all bring that into our world. So, and it takes a lot of consciousness to hear from someone and then, let them know that you're here for them, you believe them. We also train police officers to do that, right? When somebody walks into the station and says something to you, that you start by believing them. Not by questioning them, right? Or not by interrogating them, which is hard as a police officer because that's your job, right? But if we could just be human beings together, I think that helps.
I like this idea of start by believing. I think there's so many situations, like even I could think about with my children, where if we start there, it leads to a better conversation too. Like the person then feels their defenses are not up and they're willing to share more. Mm-hmm. I see that, like I said, just using my girls as an example of, they're willing to share. Like if I just believe, even if I believe their lie, their little white lie there, even if I believe it, they start kind of backtracking into, well, what really happened? Oh, okay, all right. And they start sharing a little bit more. I do want to share too, and just put a little note to this, that it's also for boys. Right? Like I know that you said girls, and certainly understandable. Your advocacy is to end violence against women, of course, but I'm sure for men too. And so I just want to add that as well, is that boys can experience the same type of traumatic situation, and it's certainly important that I think everybody is believed for sure in all of this.
And that can almost be that's even a more challenging scenario because often boys and men feel that they can't come forward, mm-hmm. right? And then often, there's a lot of shame associated with it. So it's even more important mm-hmm. How that reaction or response from the person that you decide to share your story with. Mm. So I feel this like incredible responsibility. So I have a 2-year-old son, and that's an incredible responsibility to raise him to be a kind, compassionate human being. And then I have a 8-month-old girl. So that to me threw me for a loop of, oh my gosh, how do I make sure I raise the strongest, most compassionate human being in my baby girl as well? So I don't know, hopefully you got some tips for me, but
I think it's really what you're doing. I mean, I think like you said too about these parents that you're helping, is that our children model our behaviors. And if we're a good model for them, they're going to learn over time. I was thinking about when you were just talking about being patient and your perfection with your children. You may know about this show, but you will definitely learn about it. Bluey.
Yes,
you've heard of it.
I've been introduced to Bluey.
You've been introduced?
Yes.
There's an episode where Chili, which is Bluey's mother, goes back into time as to when Bluey was an infant and learning to walk, and how she was comparing herself to other mothers in the mother groups mm-hmm. and seeing other kids walking. And she goes through the whole story of like comparing and perfection. And she shares all of this she's sharing it with her 2 daughters, Bluey and Bingo. And I just think it's such a great episode, not just for the children to see what the parents were feeling, but also for parents. Like my wife and I watch it and we're like, wow, that's exactly how we felt. And the mother realizes, Bluey's mother, Chili, realizes that she was comparing her daughter to another parent and their parenting, when meanwhile that parent had 8 children already and had been through it 8 times. And this was like this was the 8th one. So of course she kind of knew what to do or what to expect or how to kind of be patient. Whereas Chili, this was the first time. And she, didn't know what to do or what to expect or anything. And it was, I think at the end of it, and why I bring it up now is like to give yourself grace as a parent, is that, if all of your intentions, like what you just said too about the other parents, are that you're loving and your intentions are to help them and to care for them and to give them, and then you're modeling that behavior in your life, then give them the time to do that too, and give yourself grace when they mess up and when you mess up, because we mess up.
Right. Listen, as I call myself a recovering perfectionist, but as a recovering perfectionist, I have never been so imperfect as I am as a parent. So it is really quite a learning experience.
Oh, watch that episode. It'll be great. I love that show. In fact, my daughters asked me who my favorite cartoon character is. And, you think back of your childhood and you're like, oh, of course, Michelangelo, Ninja Turtles, and, Bugs Bunny. And you think about that. And I'm like, you know what? Bandit, who's the dad in Bluey. I'm like, he has climbed up the ladder. He's right behind Michelangelo. I don't think anybody will ever take Michelangelo's place. But Bandit is right there. I absolutely love him. I feel like it's such a great show for not just kids, but parents too, I think. So there's a big plug there for Bluey, I guess.
Well, now I'm going to have to get more into Bluey. I mean, right now we're really into Coco Melon, but I'm sure
they're not there yet. Yeah, there too. Their attention span's a little bit different. They certainly will. I want to go back again. I want to stay kind of like here because I think the story really helps unravel a lot of the work that you do. And so I'm interested now, you mentioned with the school in that like this boy sat next to her in school, and not necessarily this situation, you might not have been as involved, but now today when you think about these situations that happen, how do you work with the school? What kind of conversations do you have with administrators and teachers to where you're also not sharing too much, or maybe you need to? I don't know what's the legality behind it all to where the student maybe doesn't want anybody else to know. There's a lot to work with there.
Yeah. And, things today are very different. There's lots of federal laws and, Title IX and, really acts of, teen dating violence or sexual assault are really considered, discrimination, gender discrimination. And so, at least I know colleges really have very in-depth processes. But what's really important to know is that having an advocate is really important. And, that's a large part of what we do at Family Services is advocate in whatever space, whether it's with school districts or police or hospitals, because, not everybody is going to be an expert on a trauma-informed, victim-centered response to a crime. However, we can help any institution be that. So, for example, if a parent needed help, hey, something happened to my child and, she's struggling in school because of it, we could certainly come in and help with the school district set up a safety plan. How does this individual enter and exit the school safely? How do we ensure that they can still focus on their academics without worrying about, running into an individual that has caused harm to them or makes them feel unsafe? And then a lot of it's also about helping children process trauma. If you don't process trauma, it will come back at some point in your life. And, sometimes folks work off the premise that hurt people. And, that doesn't always happen, but sometimes it does. And as I think about, one of the big programs that we have at Family Services is around the prevention of gun violence, particularly in the city of Poughkeepsie, which is an area where, there's been high instances of gun violence. And we take what's considered to be a public health approach to gun violence, and that is that we do direct street outreach and interrupting instances of violence. So we would mediate, say, if a shooting were to happen tonight, we would mediate with the family members or the victim around not retaliating, right? Because it would happen again. But what we learned from the folks that we work with and the individuals is that oftentimes they have been through immense trauma in their lives, right? They have watched their friends die due to gun violence. They feel unsafe in their communities. They may have experienced violence in their homes between their parents. We can only expect that without being able, to process that trauma or to deal, that it will emerge in other ways in your life. And sometimes that means you feel unsafe, so you're also carrying a gun. And now a situation happens, and so you're using that gun, right? So we know that it's cyclical, right? It's not that these are bad people, it's that they've experienced, right? And we work off the premise of not what's wrong with you, it's what's happened to you, right? So when people walk in our door, it's not what's wrong, it's what's happened to you, right? What are you processing in your life? And we all have that, we all carry that with us. We're human beings.
So, I mean, in certain situations where there's bullying or things of obviously the situation that we spoke about earlier, when you're advocating, are there processes in place to where that person can be removed from their class or changed, or like does the victim have to leave and be uprooted?
I think most institutions have a process. I know colleges certainly do. Our advocacy stance would always be that the victim or survivor not be impacted, right? Because that's unfair,
right?
And we don't want them to be punished. If it's their choice, like I'd prefer to, change my schedule, then that's a different story. But yeah, our advocacy stance would always be, that the victim not be punished, for what happened.
That's certainly a scary situation because we're talking about middle school. We're talking about 11-year-olds. And I mean, that kind of stuff happens even at younger ages and continues to happen. And so I guess the only way, like you said, is to be able to hopefully hear about it and believe in the individual and to be able to help the individual. I'm going to kind of shift out of this a little bit just for a moment here because I want to kind of go to your leadership style. When we first were talking, when you first started talking about working in the space that you work and the word entrepreneur, I think of the word intrapreneur. And the word intrapreneur, which is kind of like kind of a buzzword to some extent too, but it's taking ownership within an organization. And you've pretty much exemplified those traits throughout your entire career of starting as an intern, working your way in almost every department at Family Services to now the CEO. And a lot of it has to do with of course, your reason for being there, but also your style that you lead in, and probably doing that since you were an intern. And so I am very interested in what that looks like, your leadership style, maybe how it started, where it kind of came from in your life.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think that, hands down, every time I do like a leadership assessment, I come out like this leadership style, the inspirational leader, right? Probably not cool. Surprising, right? And I think that's probably what people would say about me. But, I feel lucky because I am so passionate about what I do. And it's the whole idea that I keep saying about going back to your why. People, if you can talk about your why and what you believe in, then people that also believe in what you believe in want to work with you, right? Or want to work for you, or want to work hard for you, right? People, like, if you talk about results, right? You talk about money, you talk about, services, you're going to get people that come in and work a 9 to 5 for you. If you talk about why, changing the world, right? That, our service to the community, that people get better with us, right? That people thrive with us. You're going to get people to give you your heart and soul when they come to work for you, right? And those are two very different things, right? And you can't, build your tribe if you can't inspire people. So, because I care so deeply about what I do and I get so excited about it, I tend to be able to help other people care about it too, right? And then
it rubs off.
Right. And like for me, why do I love working at Family Services? Well, there's a whole lot of other really passionate people that work there. And they are the coolest people to be around, right? People that just, I don't care what you're passionate about. It could be about ice cream. It could be about, coffee. You're just fun to be around, right? When you're passionate. So when you're passionate, you're able to spark movement, and in people, you're able to bring tribes together. I think if you can articulate a vision, right, that you truly believe in, you can get people to also believe in that. And I I've always, I can't do this work alone, right? The only reason I wanted this job was because we have the coolest people working for us, right? And like this, I make an effort as the CEO to meet staff as often as I can, right? Actually just came from my monthly CEO breakfast where I invite 6 to 7 staff. My assistant just does a random thing and just chooses people, and then I invite them to come and have breakfast with me. And so when I first started doing it, it was like crickets. Nobody wants to come. I was like sitting there by myself, and people were scared that they were going to get fired. And they were like,
over breakfast.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, I totally wouldn't fire you over breakfast. Like maybe lunch, but not breakfast. That's just wrong. So, but they were scared. They were like scared of me. And I'm like, what the heck? Like, why are you scared of me? I was you yesterday. Like I came in here with the same, passion and purpose to serve the community. And there's no reason just because of my title to be scared of me. So now, like as people have started, like now they're excited about it. And I'll hear from people like, I hope to get invited to one of your breakfasts. And so now like people are all in, and it's a really good opportunity. But people think I'm doing that, for myself, like, or for them, right? To have access to the CEO, but it's for me because I need inspiration. Like I need to hear from staff, why do they come to work? And I'm always found asking in a group of people or a group of our staff, like, what brought you here? Why are you here? Because like I said, that keeps you coming back with your heart and soul, not with money. And listen, as nonprofits, you're not in it for the money ever. So we have to find other ways to make staff feel good about the work that they're doing and want to come work hard. And so that was a little bit of a rabbit hole, but yes, I think one of my tenets as a leader is also around ensuring that you always can somehow bring the value of hope into what you're doing. Because we carry a lot on our shoulders as leaders. It's really easy to be overwhelmed or negative. So I had a really good a mentor say something to me once, and it's just like my total tenet of leadership. He said to me, if you got on a plane and the pilot came out and was like, oh my gosh, really strong winds today. I'm not feeling good about this. Oh my God. Oh, we're definitely going down. Oh, this like, would you get off that plane? Like you would totally get up and get off that plane, right? So it's the same thing as a leader, right? If you are overwhelmed, negative, not hopeful, people are not going to get on your plane. And so no matter how much you're carrying, you have got to be able to shake that off and put a realistic but hopeful face. And another thing, another one of my tenets of leadership, and I had to learn this, and so I'm speaking right now to young leaders because I became a leader or, a manager at a very young age. And as a young woman, I felt like I was always having to prove myself, right? That I wouldn't, naturally have credibility because I was young and people used to talk about it all the time. And one time, like in an interview, I actually said the words, I know I may look, I know I'm young, but, my age does not define me. What defines me is my passion for what I do. And years later, someone said to me, I'm going to put that on your gravestone because that was like a really good thing to say. And I got that job, and I think that's what launched my career. But I always say, so something I had to learn was how to show vulnerability as a leader. And that's something that's really hard for leaders to do because we think that we're supposed to have it all and we're supposed to have the answers. And when I made that switch in my life of telling people, I don't know the answer, or admitting when I made a mistake, people were like, oh yeah, she's a human, right? And I got so much more cooperation from folks and understanding. And I was able to create this environment where it's okay to make a mistake, right? It's okay to tell me if you don't know the answer. And that's how we learn and grow together. So when I was able to start to show vulnerability as a leader, it just changed. And then it was like so much less pressure on me, right? So and then also I foster leadership in other people. I'll like, if someone comes to me and I don't know the answer, I'll say, well, what do you think? And a lot of times they know the answer, right? So, but that's hard to do as a leader, right? To start to trust in yourself that people won't think, you're horrible if you tell them you don't know, or you tell them you made a mistake, you did something wrong. It actually humanizes you. So I would just put that plug out there for people.
I like that. I'm going to tie that back to parenting for you.
Oh, gosh, here we go.
And for everyone in that, so much that we learn in business and in leadership, if we just take it home, we're going to be all right. So same thing with the kiddos, right? It's like, just be vulnerable with them. Let them know like, hey, I don't know what I'm doing. Like I've never taught somebody how to use a potty before. So bear with me here, kid, right? And even if they don't understand language quite yet, although the 2-year-old definitely does, or might certainly do, they'll feel those emotions, and it's okay to be vulnerable with them. I've learned that with my girls in that, I apologize to them and I let them know, hey, sorry, I lost it. I'm frustrated right now. Mm-hmm. Hey, I've worked, the whole day and now you're asking me for more and I don't have it right now. And to just share that with them. And they, they've been learning my wife and my parenting skills for years. So they know how to come back to it now and just go, yeah, you know what, Dad, I get it. Or they're just, they get bummed and that's what they are. And, they're bummed for that moment. And we just have to deal with it and figure it out. We kind of like be vulnerable here a little bit with you in that things aren't always, they might seem perfect from the outside, but they're not always, right? So we do a family mission statement every week, and it's a lot of fun. And we all do it together, and we sit down. And the girls, it started off with me first writing it all out, but they wanted to write, so they started writing. So it kind of morphed into its own thing, and it has all these different. And every week it changes. The mission statement is always different, and the values are different, and the rewards and consequences are always different involved in it. And so like from the outside, it's like, wow, look at you and your family. You get together every Sunday and you do this family mission statement. How beautiful. And you frame it. And we frame it. We put it over the mantle and it's there. And we remind ourselves of it whenever one of us is acting out of our values. And that's wonderful, right? But actually this past week when we went to do it, we got into a huge family argument. We were just like, everybody was just like getting on each other. We were feeling pressured on time, like we needed to get it done before bed. And we were and one of us wasn't cooperating and one of us was getting upset and frustrated. And it was just kind of like going around in a circle. But we all sat there in it. And that's what I was like the most proud of that moment was like, I was like, you know what? Like the last several months we've been doing this weekly. And it's cool, right? And some of them we remember, some of those moments we remember, some of them we don't. But this one I'm going to remember because like this one was like the worst. But we all stayed in the room and we all kind of like fought through it. And in the end, we did write out our mission statement. I don't know if it's the best or the worst one yet, but it certainly didn't have as much written as we normally write. But I think it was that vulnerability that my wife shared, that I shared, and that my children shared of like, we went around and we apologized to each other of, like for me, I was like, I'm sorry for getting frustrated with all of you. I'm sorry for getting frustrated that it wasn't happening the way I wanted it to happen. And, Denise and we all shared. And I just go back to this piece of vulnerability. Like when you think about doing that with your team, right? Where your team is thinking of us as the leader as like, oh, they're perfect and they want it done this certain way. And maybe we do, and maybe we put that pressure, but like it explodes in a team meeting. But I think staying in that moment and being vulnerable, be like, you know what, I screwed up. Like, as your leader, I didn't do all the right things and I didn't think about this way. And sharing that with them, I think that they come back and, start appreciating us a little bit more.
That is so beautiful. I'm so inspired right now. I'm totally going to do that. Thank you for that idea. But and you know what got you through that moment was your why, right? That you knew why, the value that this brings to your family, right? Mm-hmm. So it sat you in that processing, getting through that really hard time. And I'll tell you what, your children will remember that. Mm-hmm. Like I remember, that was something unique about my parents, right? We never got grounded as kids because when we did something wrong, they would send us to our room. And then within 5 minutes, my dad would be at the door and he would say, do you have something to say? And when you said sorry, you weren't grounded. So I always remember thinking like my friends would say, oh, I'm grounded. And I thought this was really unique. And I felt fortunate that like I always had another chance, right? I had another chance to say like, yeah, I made a mistake. And I did something wrong in that moment, but it's okay, right? I'm not going to have to sit and think about it for the next week and not go out with my friends. That I had the option, right? And sometimes I probably didn't say sorry, right? Because I was a kid. Yeah. But that's something I, to this day, remember about my parents. So your kids will remember that. And it's so true. But you know what? My 2-year-old's a hard negotiator. I mean, I tried this star potty chart thing. He didn't care about stars.
No.
What do you mean you don't want a star? He didn't care. You don't want a star.
Two-year-olds are. I remember we couldn't wait till the third birthday, and even
I hear it gets worse.
It's those are some challenging years that you're in right now. But I'll tell you, by 4 years old, I mean, right now I feel like we are in our like golden stage right now. Like it's just so much fun. Like we're playing. Like there's that playfulness. There's that imagination that's happening. There's that conversation that happens between us. To where we can, really share and they share back. They don't have those boundaries up yet. Although I'm starting to see it with the older one, where eventually, they start getting that teen years where they're not going to share. So we try to provide that space. And that was the other thing I was going to bring up about this breakfast that you do, is providing that space. And letting them know it's safe. And I feel like we're just like so in the parenting thing, and I want to keep it there too, to like tie it back too, because I think people talk so much about work-life balance and we talk about harmony and everything, but that's what this is. Like when we're talking about the two, they're so similar. Like with my daughters, when I'm upset with them, I tell them why I'm upset with them. And I'm like, you did this, and that, and that's why you're punished, right? And sometimes when I can finally get a clear level head, most of the time I'll go back to them and I'll say, all right, here's your turn to share. And I tell them, I'm not going to be upset with you. You can tell me anything you want. I won't get upset with you. There won't be any consequences. Just tell me what you're thinking and what you're upset about with me. What did I do to you that you're upset about? And I really want to know, we'll go back to this breakfast now, in the importance of providing a safe space for people to share, why they're passionate about their work. And I think that that's so important. And I love that you do that. You talk about you being, I'm inspired by that. I'm like, I want to go have breakfast with my employees now. It's a lot easier for me because I have 2, or we just onboarding another one. So we have 3 now. You have 480 employees. So it's a lot more challenging. So I'm interested in this challenge that you have in front of you of, just under 500 employees, if you've not grown since our last conversation. What those conversations are like, and maybe, of course you hear their commitment and their why, but what about when they bring up things that are maybe challenging to your leadership, not just your leadership, but your team, your leadership team as a whole? How do you engage in that conversation, and how do you acknowledge what's going on and perhaps fix or change or whatever it is?
Yeah, and that really goes back to that idea of showing vulnerability, is that sometimes somebody might say something to me and I don't have a good answer for it. And that's a really uncomfortable place to sit as a leader, right? Especially because you want to put on a good face when you're in front of staff. And so, I think asking for feedback is the most important thing, right? You might not be able to change everything. And sometimes I can have an answer about why something is the way it is. But sometimes it's more about just listening to people. And, for example, we are, we run, behavioral health clinics. So we are highly regulated by the state, Article 31 clinics that, require that staff meet a certain level of productivity in order to keep our lights on, right? In order to pay the bills. And so one of those, so it can often feel like a lot of pressure that you're dealing with a high needs population and you have to see a certain amount of people a day, and it's very stressful. So that's often like some feedback I hear is that, it feels like a male, culturally, let's do away with productivity. Well, we can't, right? Because we have to keep the lights on. But, what are other things we can do, right, to make people feel valued? We actually just launched what we're calling a We Value You campaign. And so we're just in the beginning stages of it as a leadership team, but we will, be doing different initiatives to demonstrate to our employees that we value them. And sometimes that's just saying thank you. Sometimes that's, sending a message. Sometimes that's reminding people of their why they're here. It's not always, in nonprofit, it can't be about money. We can't always, say we value you, here's a bonus, right? We can't do that. So we have to really find other ways that connect with people, so that, because we know that people are getting fulfillment in their life from the work that they do. So how can we make sure they do that regardless of the different pressures that might be on any of us in a role? Right?
I think it's so important to show your employees you value them, even if it's not just with money. We're in sales, and my organization is a sales organization. It's insurance. So, it's commission based. So it's not just, hey, you got a bonus and everything. I think even for me, when I was a salesperson, my greatest feeling of appreciation was when a manager just sat and spoke with me and listened to me and heard me and, to your point, valued me as an employee. And I think, no matter what industry we're in, if we can do that. And I think it's also a message for our listeners here, just a text message. Like I send a text message to my team. I speak to them every day. And like I said, I only have 2 to 3, so it's not this overwhelming task. But I send them a text message every week on a Friday, happy Friday, have a great weekend. And everybody kind of responds back. And I think that communication is very important, to have with our team, right? Because it kind of goes back to that vulnerability, is that if we can just say, have a great weekend, that opens the door for so many other things if they're there, if we need to address them, right?
Right. And, something that is so important is also just meeting people where they're at. If as a leader, you're never seeing people, especially in this remote working world, right? If you're never seeing people in person, if you're never going to their sites, that can make there feel like a division. And a lot of times people, it doesn't always have to be the truth, but people create stories in their head about, oh, I never see Leah, so, she doesn't care about our office over here. And, it goes down a rabbit hole, and I try to, in all of my communication with staff, have a few key things I always say. Whenever I communicate with staff, I am saying thank you. I'm saying, I know you carry a heavy load of caring for your families and caring for your community through this job. Thank you. Thank you for choosing compassion and humanity in your career, because not everybody does that, because it's not easy, right? So thank you for showing up today, and thank you for being compassionate today. And I always sign all of my messages, instead of saying from or sincerely, I always say together, Leah, because people need to feel that I'm in this with you, right? We're in this together. And being in this together means we're walking alongside people that need us the most in the community, right? And that's why we're here. So, I always make sure I have those tenets. And then I talk about, the North Star a lot, right? That our mission, right? As nonprofits, obviously we're very mission based, and but talking about that North Star, because you need your truth, right? You need your truth to go back to time and time again. And as a leader, when you're trying to do innovative things, right? You're trying to do breakthrough innovation. You often don't have a full vision or full answer, right? Because it's breakthrough innovation, right? So what you're hoping is that you have your North Star and you have the people that believe in your truth to come along with you. And that's the only, any of the greats, right? That's the only way they've ever gotten anything done, right? Is being able to have people that are believers in their truth and in their North Star. So being able to talk about that, is really important.
I want to go back to the little rabbit hole that we were in before, because I meant to acknowledge this when you said you work with some of the coolest people.
Oh my gosh, I do.
You were identifying these are the coolest people, and they're so passionate. And I wanted to just share with our audience here. You're pretty cool too. You got your red highlights in today. And when I saw that when you first walked in, I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And as the CEO of an organization, to have red highlights, that's pretty bold, right? I think that's pretty cool, and also shows how cool you are. And I think that's very important too.
Well, I appreciate that. And actually, my friend said to me the other day that there was a picture on social media or something, and her like 5-year-old daughter looked at it and said, oh, I just think it's really cool that she has a very professional jacket on and red hair. And I said, well, that is just a really good statement of who I am as a person. So thank you.
And it's so important though, like now when we think about the workplace and dress codes in the workplace and everything, and how that limited so many people from different types of jobs. When you think about the financial industry, right? A very regulated industry. And so, what's the first image you think about in the financial industry is a suit and tie or a pencil skirt and a blouse. Mm-hmm. And if I don't meet that criteria of the dark hair or the gray hair of the dark hair and glasses, if I don't meet that criteria, then even if I love finances, I love math, I love all that stuff, I'm not going to go in that field because I like to dye my hair and I like to dress differently. Mm. And I love that. I think COVID kind of helped us with this, and I'm very interested in your thoughts on that, in stripping away the dress code to so many industries, right? Mm. To where we're allowed to be ourselves a little bit more and show vulnerability and show who we are as individuals.
And you won't believe how many people actually will comment on that, and how, staff to say like, I feel, not that I did this because to feel more, I've always had it, but, one thing like I just love about the platform I have today as CEO is that I get to define what the CEO means. And as a woman, as a young mother, that, it's really hard, right? So our organization was led by men, older white men for decades. And, our last CEO was great and I worked under him for many years and I'm really honored to have done that. And I thought to myself, like, that's what it meant to be a CEO, right? That's what I saw. But then I took this job, the day before I gave birth to a baby.
Oh my goodness. I wanted to go there with when you got hired. So I would love for you to really unravel that story.
Yeah. So I, like I've said, I am like, I've wanted to be a CEO forever because I think it's so cool. And so I love leadership and I am so passionate about women in leadership. And so I would say like I waited a while to have kids because I was really invested in my career. I was just, doing my thing, climbing the ladder. And I had my son and then I was pregnant with my second, and the CEO who I'd been working with for many years says to me, I'm retiring. And I was like, oh God, you gotta be kidding me. I was like 9 months pregnant and I'm like, can't you wait? Like I've wanted this opportunity forever. And I seriously, strangely in my head, I said to myself, it's not my time. Like, even though I'd been waiting for 10 years for it to be my time, I said, it's not my time. And so I went home to my husband and I said, I just, the CEO is leaving and it's just not my time. And he was like, are you crazy? Like, you have been talking about this forever. Are you going to wait another 10 years? And I'm like, yeah, maybe. And he was like, no, go for it. And I said, you know what this means for us? We're going to have 2 under 2. What this means for us. And he was like, just do it. By the way, nowadays I'm saying, this is what I meant. This is what this meant for us. Right? This is what I was saying, But so I took all the courage of, interviewing for this job with some of the most important people. And I actually interviewed for this job the day before I gave birth. I was sweating it out for many reasons because I was 9 months pregnant, but also because I was so scared I wasn't going to get my interview before this baby came. And I was like, I said, I know you won't do this to me, to the baby. Like, you'll stay in there until I get my interview done. And so she did. And then I had, I think 7 interviews with probably about 40 different people my first week postpartum. And, I said to myself, I've trained my whole life for this, and I am someone who's always prepared. Like I am never not prepared. But I was not prepared for these interviews because how could I be, right? I had an infant and a 2-year-old. And I just said to myself, I'm just going to show up as I can and hope that my passion or my why will shine through here. And I got the job. And so I started this job. I think baby was 4 or 6 weeks old. And I just feel so free at the, to be able to redefine what it means to be a CEO and be a woman and be a mother. And I've heard about this, but I've never experienced it. And now I'm experiencing it. And so, for example, I was on a board meeting a couple weeks ago, and my 2-year-old was home and with the stomach bug. And I said to myself, oh, he's on the couch. He'll be okay. He's not feeling well. Well, of course, halfway through the meeting, he's, oh, mommy, behind me. And I had no choice but to put him on my lap and continue the meeting, right? And I thought to myself, should I turn my camera off? They can't tell. Should I hide him? But I was like, no. And I know that there are some people in that room that were judging me, but I also know there were some people in that room that were like, yeah. Good for you. So redefining unapologetically what it means to be a CEO. A couple weeks ago, I was at the, we have some partners, the Heritage Financial Credit Union. They are located within our building. We operate what's called the Family Partnership Center, and we have 20 different nonprofits who are located together in our building. And Heritage actually opened the first banking institution on the north side of Poughkeepsie. So really enhancing access for the north side of Poughkeepsie to a banking institution. And they also recently got naming rights to the Renegade Stadium. So they invited us to come as their partners and throw out the first pitch a couple weeks ago. And so I, had my kids and I'm like, what am I going to do? So it's the Renegades. So don't you know, I got on that mound with baby in hand and threw that first pitch, and I threw a strike.
Nice.
With the baby. So, I just do whatever I can to, redefine so I can continue to inspire and foster leadership in other women, right? To know that, and I am not saying that some women choose to be mothers and, pause their career or not build their career. And that's great. I love that too. But just from my experience, that wasn't an option for me, right? I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a CEO and I wanted to have kids. And I'm here to tell you, you can have it all, but you need a lot of coffee and you're going to be tired all the time. But you can do it, and you're inspiring people with your journey. So, that whole story about, being in the board meeting. Prior to that board meeting, I was on a call with my executive team with my 2-year-old with a stomach bug. Actually, missed the toilet with his stomach bug all over me. And you know what I said to my team? I got to go. And they were like, you should go. Right. So it's just going to happen. And I'm just happy that I feel that that's been embraced. Right. And that humanizes me as a leader. And it's okay. We can do that. Right. We can be vulnerable. We can be humans.
I love that you were able to go through all of those meetings with the kids. I think back of you have a choice when this is happening in those meetings. And this was pre-Zoom that I saw this video. So this happened to a TV news reporter of sorts. He's a reporter. It's a viral video on YouTube. So you might have seen it or may have caught a clip of it. He was being interviewed. He's working from home. And his child breaks into the room. It's like a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old breaks into the room and is in the background. Now he's on international TV being interviewed. And the maid, you could tell it's a housekeeper or maid or babysitter of sorts or au pair, gets in the room and goes starts crawling army style and grabs the baby and by the pants and is dragging the baby out. And the news reporter is making it nothing, is trying to make it nothing's happening. And he's just focused on the camera, and they pull the baby out and close the door. And now, of course, this went viral, not because of what this guy was saying, but it went viral because it's so weird, right, that it happened. And so I think about that choice that we can make of do we want to be that TV news reporter? Nothing against him and his parenting. I'm not trying to put a judgment on it in any way. It's what he chose. And you can make that choice to have the kid exit the room or whatever. Or do you want to choose to have the kid on the lap? And that's the choice that we make in those situations. And so I think, I prefer the choice of the lap. I prefer that choice because I've thought about it a few times. I've had my daughters interrupt my Zoom meetings, and I'm like, "Get out! What are you doing?" And I'm in that moment, I'm just all right, who do I want to be right now?
Right.
And it's so hard because you're 100% right. You certainly are being judged in that moment. I mean, I know I judge people when the cat walks across the camera. I'm not going to lie. I certainly do.
Well, the cat people appreciate it. Yes.
And they do. But what I want to say about that too is that is also teaching your team, like you talked about compassion before. Like when we talk about compassion, and I was going to ask you for your definition on it, and I think we could stay there in terms of this. But when we think about what is compassion, compassion's not just the work that we're doing in the community, which is tremendous work, but it's compassion for each other right here in our team meeting or in our board meeting or in any type of setting, of social setting, of like just having compassion for somebody else who's choosing to deal with a situation however they chose to deal with it. Right.
Yeah, a really good example, that's on my mind and kind of defines compassion for me is, there's a lot going on at the moment with asylum seekers coming into our refugees coming into our area. And as the leading human services organization in the 3 counties in the Hudson Valley, I, immediately as I saw this, called folks and said, what can we do? What do these individuals need? Do they need food? Do they need mental health services? Do they need medical services? And, of course, this is very political. Anyone I talk to about it, there's a feeling. I don't care about your feelings. These are human beings, right? I don't care why they're here, how they're here, who cares that they're here, this, that. I have human beings now in my community. How can we not meet them with compassion? These are children, parents. Clearly, they're coming here because for safety, for well-being, for their families. You think it was easy? They took quite a risk to come here, and they've dealt with trauma, and they need support. We're now dealing with humans, so all the other noise, needs to just go away so we can be compassionate to our fellow people. And that's where I always come back. Like if I'm struggling, for showing compassion, I just think about these people are humans. Like it's like with your 2-year-old, right? It's hard sometimes when they're like screaming at you or like to show compassion, right? At 5:00 this morning, my 2-year-old walked in and woke me up at dead sleep because he wanted his socks. And I was very asleep, so he screamed it that he wanted his socks, and it was hard for me to be compassionate in this moment. But
getting startled awake is so hard.
Right. But he's 2, right? So I think about, okay, what's he going through in his head? His socks are really important to him in this moment, but really maybe his feet were cold, right? Maybe right. So as much as I didn't want to be compassionate in that moment, I just thought about him as a human being and where he is in his life, and it's just about being a human, right? And
my compassion switch needs about 10 minutes after I wake up to be. It is tough getting woken up like that.
It was very startling, that's for sure.
I do not like being startled. Yeah, the compassion for others. And you're talking about a situation that is very politicized, and there's a lot of politics behind it, and we're certainly not talking in terms of that there. We're just talking about humanity. I go back to what you were sharing about these parents and their stories, and we don't know what their stories are, and you were talking about how you help work with these parents and processing their own traumas so that they can help their own children. And I think about that with the situations now when we have this population coming in, is that if we treat them in a way that causes trauma to them, then what cycle are we creating for them to where we don't know if they're going to stay or go? And whether that's good or bad, we have no idea. But say they stay and you meet them with trauma, you meet them with disrespect or whatever it is that happens to where they don't feel welcomed. Well, then what cycle are we creating for them to stay?
I know.
Right?
I know.
So I think that meeting them with compassion, I love that your first call is, what can we do to help? I really love that. I think that in terms of leadership, when we think about our team, when we think about our family, when we think about our community, if we can just reach out with the idea of how can I help you? How can I serve you? We're going to get so much more out of it, right?
Right. And because, this is actually a good statement in, this was an important moment for me as a leader, right? Because I, sat my team down yesterday and I said, we need to move and we need to move fast. And I understand that people have feelings about this. I don't care what your feelings are. Wait, I have feelings about it, right? We all have feelings about it, good or bad or indifferent. What I'm asking for you is to treat everybody that comes through our doors as human beings and treat them compassionately. So let's put aside that noise, right? And I know that some people on my team were, either they disagreed with me or they weren't, but, I brought it back to that, right? It's not about what we're doing, it's about why we're doing it, right? There are people standing in front of us that need help, and we are going to help them.
I just saw this quote recently about conflict is needed in teams, and it's actually healthy to have this conflict in teams. And whether it's about this situation or any others, I'm interested in your thoughts on this. And that what he was saying is that if there isn't conflict in a team, if there isn't any type of space, we were talking about spaces before, if there isn't a space to where people can disagree, then something's unhealthy in the organization. And so it's not about whether having the conflict on a team stops and halts all work. It's that you allow for this conflict to be there, to what you were saying there of like I don't care how your feelings are and all that stuff. Like, I know that you do care. It's more of a statement than it is a truth. But we got to do this. And we can talk about your feelings. We can talk about all that. We can have this like conversation and disagree with each other. But at the end of the day, we have a mission and we have to go forward with it. And I am interested in terms of this conflict amongst teams, because I did see you kind of grimace to that. So I love it. What your thoughts are on that and how to foster that.
Yeah, I was just like chuckling to myself because my chief, one of my other chief officers, who I consider really to be my partner, in this work on sort of the business end of it, like we disagree on everything, but we're a really good team. And she is like finance, numbers, and I look at her as like this, boxed in numbers person, and she looks at me like this bleeding heart, like, you know what I mean? Right. Like, she thinks I'm totally, way too way too soulful. I think she's totally way too number focused, right? But we come together around our mission, right? Around our why. So I knew she was the first person I had to talk to when I had this idea of, mobilizing, right, to help the communities that are coming in. I knew I had this vision and idea with my partner, who's kind of the other, soulful, programmatic person. And we talked about it, and I said, we got to talk to, this other person. She's not going to like it. And so I knew I had to onboard her, though, or else it wasn't going to happen. So I just called her up and I said, I got to talk to you about something. You're not going to like it. Not because of political beliefs, but because of just the steps it would take to get there, and the logistical nightmare about it. And I was like, but before you say anything, I said, these are humans, and we have to help these humans. And she was like, sat back, looked at me funny. I know her looks, and then she said, "All right, what are we gonna do?" So, like, I knew everything in her was like, "This is crazy. This is not gonna happen. This is not gonna work." But then, by the end of the conversation, she was asking about the how. And, there's like kind of when you have to work with, and this is someone I worked with for years, right? So I know her very well. But, the why, the how, and the what, you start with that why, then you go to the how, and then you make it happen, right? So that's really the kind of process I had to go through with her. And also, so as a team, we are very conscious of identifying each other's strengths and also identifying other areas of growth for individuals. And we kind of, as a team, make a joke about it, right? Like, I know, like, she is very strong with numbers and gets, somewhat frustrated by people who, are more visionary, right? She knows I'm the opposite. So like, we'll talk about that. I'll be like, "Oh yeah, you're getting into your numbers thing. Boring." Right. And like, we laugh about it and we make a joke about it. And it's often the root of everything we disagree on, but we know that about each other. And I also know I need to surround myself with people that are very different than me, because I need to be challenged on a daily basis to think differently. And diversity of thought is so important. And, I'm really careful how I craft my teams, right? You need, there's a million examples of, your different types of people that you take to make a team, right? I like to think about this, the bear, the eagle, the deer, that, you need someone in each of those realms, right? That can complete your team. And yes, a team that is not having, and maybe we won't call it conflict, right? But you can call it diversity of thought, right? Teams that aren't doing that or are not even are still in the forming stages, right? Your teams go through the forming, norming, and then storming, whatever. If you're not formed yet because people don't agree with everything you say around the table. But if you have silence or just ultimate agreement, you're not there yet. Right? You're definitely not there yet. Or you don't have the right mix of people on your team.
I love the diversity of thought. I think it's, and then the other thing I like that you said, because people are always so worried about the way that we use the negative connotation on words like criticism or development or anything. And I like how you use areas of growth. I think that does remove the negative connotation of anything. It's like it's an area of growth. It's like, and I love area of growth too, because it shows that we have an opportunity to grow in any area that we want. We really do. Like if you want to be a numbers person, like I'm not, I'm with you on the inspiration side. Like I'm bleeding heart inspiration all day long, love talking, love doing all that stuff. As soon as you start bringing numbers in front of me, I shut down. I'm quivering in a corner. But you and I both know that if we need to, and when we need to, because we do, we can turn on our accountant mind and figure out how to understand the P&L and understand where the expenses are going and how we're going to financially figure out this solution that we're coming up with, right? So I love that, areas for growth and identifying your skills, so important. You had mentioned it. I touched on this early on. I actually not touched on. I made a note of this early on when you first said it, that you said your skills are better suited in policy and in management. And I thought that was so important to make a note of, because when we think about leadership, it's not about what your skills are. It's that you know how to identify them, because your partner who's the accountant, or not accountant, but who is the financial arm of the business, could also be the CEO. Just as much as you are in terms of the inspiration of the business. It's not about the skills, really, right? It's that you identified what they were. So I love that you guys do that, and that you have these meetings and openness for all of it.
And I also like to talk about, a good leadership team can really, you can move people around on the bus, right? You talk about everybody needs to find the right seat on the bus, but then if someone moves their seat, like you have to have people that can fill in, right? So you have to be able to pivot. And we just recently did this assessment as a team. It's called a working genius, and what it brings up is like your working genius is the thing you get most enjoyment from, and then it lists the thing you get the least enjoyment from. So, while maybe we can do it, it doesn't light our fire, right? It doesn't energize us. Right. It doesn't excite us. So I think it's really important to know, what energizes you, and then what doesn't. And then that's important to move people around on the bus, right?
And I think about that all. So I have a coach, and it's kind of the same conversation that we have. Is like, if my energy isn't around it, then who else can I contract to do it for me? Because I'm spending 6 hours on something that somebody who's energized about it can get it done in 2 hours. And where can I spend that 4 hours or that 6 hours, now that I've given to somebody else, that inspires me, that I'm super energetic and loving about? I want to go back to a little bit of this conversation we were having about the team and the conflict, and I almost feel like it goes, there's might be something in this about the book that inspired you, where you were talking about Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg. Because I know that she deals with a lot in that book. I didn't read that one, but I know that there was a lot in there about conflict and about women in workspace and all this other stuff. So I'm interested in anything that maybe you gained from that book that kind of led to some of your philosophies and tenets in leadership.
Yeah, I mean, overall, that book was just so inspiring, like of you could do it, like you can do it, right? And how important it is when you have a passion or a vision or a goal to lean into that, right? So that's so important. And the other thing, one of the best pieces of advice I got from that book, and I tell people this all the time, I just told someone yesterday, is that your career is not a ladder, it's a jungle gym, right? And most people think about their career as a ladder, being like, if I'm not getting paid more, I'm not getting more responsibility, I don't want that, right? It's not a promotion. And I talk, especially to young professionals, about this all the time, is that your career is actually a jungle gym, a lateral move that helps you develop a different skill set, and a lateral move that helps you develop a different skill set culminates in, where you belong in your career and in building. So it's less about money, right? The traditional ladder. It's more about skill building. And that's so important. And I see that with the upcoming generation that's coming into the workforce now, is that there's often this perception, okay, I've been here 6 months, where's my raise? Or, okay, what now? And oh no, I don't want that job. It's the same pay. Yeah, but you're going to develop a whole new skill set, right? So I think that's how we, create whole rounded people, right? The people you want on your leadership team that can pivot on the bus, right? Can go in different seats because they've had a multitude of experiences. So that's something I always think about from that book, and I coach young people to that as well.
Another thing I'm interested in is that you do coach and you do speak a lot, and but nowhere in any of this does it say she's got a public speaking background. And so I am very interested in where you picked up your talents of being able to speak so well.
Well, my dad would tell you it's because of him, because he's a musician and he likes to take a lot of credit for everything that I do. But I think it's about, and I will tell you this, my second grade teacher would she still follows me. She still writes me notes from time to time.
That's so cool.
She used to do this thing when I was talking in front of the class where she would pretend there was a volume knob on my back and turn it up because I am soft-spoken, right? So she's probably just amazed. But I think it's when you find your passion, when you find something that energizes you, you can speak to it, right? And when you're inspired to share your story. And some people don't want to do that through speaking. Some people want to do it through writing, maybe. But or singing. That's, it wasn't always here. It's something that develops for me, I'll say. And just like anything, you got to work at it. And
you work on it, yeah.
Yeah.
I know that you have a lot of events coming up at Family Services, and of course this podcast is airing later than some of these events, but I'm sure that these events speak to what you're doing in the community. So I'd love if you can maybe share one or two of them with us right now, and so we can learn about what Family Services is doing outside of all of the crisis management, but other things that you're doing in the community.
Sure. So we have a big upcoming event. That's our annual Family of the Year Awards dinner, and that is a gala where we honor some families in the community who have been champions or have worked to make a better community, and that's going to be an exciting event coming up in July. And then we have a lot of community events also happening. So at the time that we're recording this in June, this is Gun Violence Awareness Month. That's why I'm wearing orange right now for Gun Violence Awareness. Today is Wear Orange Day. And this, we have a lot of events around that in recognition of the significant impact that gun violence has on the community. Just last month in May, we had 4 shootings in a matter of 15 days, right in the city of Poughkeepsie. 2 of those individuals that were victims of the shooting were teenagers. One of them unfortunately died due to the injuries. People don't necessarily understand how impactful gun violence has been. Gun violence is another politicized thing, right? But the reality is it's really impacting the community right here. And really, it's just a fundamental human right to be safe. And people are not, right? And so we do a lot of work to interrupt gun violence. This Saturday, we're having a community barbecue. And what we try to do is bring the community together to talk about changing norms, right? Mm-hmm. Changing societal norms that make it okay for gun violence to exist, right? How do we say no more to gun violence? So that's an event we have coming up. We do a lot of different community-based events, and then a lot of then those bigger fundraising events really that we need to be able to continue our operations.
Yeah, so I was going to ask you about that when I look at them in two different buckets of the galas and the fundraising events, and then you have the community events. The community events, I'm very interested in how you orchestrate these, because there's a lot more to it, right? You're in an inner city, you're in a inner city, and there's a lot going on. I mean, we're talking about gun violence, and it's because it's happening in that community. So what are some of the ways that you're able to get volunteers to come and organize? Because it's not just employees. We know it's volunteers as well, right? How do you get all of these different people to organize in a community that can feel unsafe and that can feel maybe they feel out of place as well because they don't live in that community? And we know that when we don't live in certain communities, there's eyes on you. And so how do you organize to be able to get into these communities? Because again, it is so important. Like, to do the work for the community is one thing, but you have to be involved and be in there to understand what's going on and how to speak their language.
Yeah, and so one thing that we do as a matter of philosophy is we hire people that live within the community, right? So in particular, our gun violence prevention program, it's called SNUG. That's guns spelled backwards. And the SNUG program is a statewide program, and there's 14 sites across the state. And we are one of those sites as an area that's been identified to have high incidence of gun violence. And the premise of the program is that we hire people that are considered credible messengers in the community. And what that means is that they are individuals who have street credibility, right? And they often are individuals who have had prior experiences with gun violence, whether it be being shot or shooting someone, former experience as gang members, formerly incarcerated. And we hire them, and what they do is direct street outreach, and they go into the communities and they work because they're trusted in the communities. And I will say, here's vulnerability as a CEO. If you ask me how to do their job, I have no idea. They are the experts in what they do. That's why we hire them. And I take my cues from them, right? If I have a question about how can I best meet this community, I'm going to ask them. I'm going to go to the people that live in the community, the people doing the work in the community, and get advice from them. And then what they do is something called canvassing. So they go in to the communities with flyers, and they just talk to people, and they say, hey, listen, we've had 3 shootings on this block. Let's come together. Let's call for an end to violence. And they knock on doors and they get the community together. Anytime there's a shooting, they congregate the very next day at the place of the shooting, and they have a call to end to violence, like a rally. And they get the community, they knock on doors, come out, join us for this rally. It is only together that we're going to change the norms that allow violence to exist in this community. And so oftentimes the areas where they choose to have events like this barbecue coming up on Saturday are areas that are considered hot, right? Areas where there have been a number of shootings, because we know those are the people we need to reach. So, they are the experts doing the work. I'm just following along and helping as best I can. And, I'm willing to meet them wherever I can. Sometimes it's not appropriate or right for me to be the face of the organization at that time. And I'm totally fine to step aside and allow, someone else to be the voice and the person that's giving the message. One thing about me as a leader is I have very little ego. I don't know everything, and I'm here for the community. So I'm more than willing to hear people's feedback or people's advice or thoughts on how things should be done. That's really hard for a CEO to say, I know.
Yeah, but it's very important and needed. And you're 100% right. Yeah, because, the street, I love the name Credible Messengers. I think the street credibility goes such a long way, because the people living in that community need to hear it from somebody who's experienced it. I mean, it's the same thing when you think about people with addiction. For someone like me to go and speak about addiction, I don't deal with addiction. So how can I tell you what to do? It's not, so I think it's such a great way to do it and to step aside. One thing I just want to make sure that we note here, so that if anybody is interested in volunteering or being a part of these community events that you guys do, is something I'm sure that could be a concern is safety and security. And how do you guys go about making sure that it's safe, a safe environment for people to congregate?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. It's something we've been talking a lot about lately because of just the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
That, how our workplaces, creating safety. And I've worked for this organization for over a decade. But I always am of the premise that I'm not scared of the people we serve, right? So I personally never feel unsafe by the people we serve. Yes, do we have instances that occur in our building? Sure. But that's part of like the compassion piece, right? That I don't feel unsafe based upon the communities and the people that we serve. Can something happen? Yes. So I always need to be realistic as well. So we certainly take measures. My experiences working in the community for many years is that the community knows that we're here to help, right? So we have a big old building on North Hamilton Street in an area of the community that some might choose not to come to because of concerns. We've always battled this, reputation that we have based upon where we're located. But the truth is that when you come, you really feel the magic that happens in our building, right? Mm-hmm. That we are a space where people can come to get any number of needs met. So we have this model, right? We're the Family Partnership Center, and it's an evolving model, but our premise is to make accessible services, right? We have an open door philosophy. You come in, you can get any number of needs met. So, for example, we have one of our partners in the building is Sun River Health, so people can come and go to see their doctor. We also have the Department of Health. They can get their vaccination or STD testing. We also have Heritage Financial Credit Union. They can come get education about financial literacy, get access to banking services. Dutchess Community College has an outlet in our building where they do English as a second language and GED courses. We have a number of youth serving organizations. We have an organization by the name of Finish Strong for Wellness. They do boxing with young kids. We have Real Skills, which is an after-school elementary program. We have the Mighty Young Techs. They do STEAM work. We also have Commune Life. They do work with young Latina individuals who have been identified to be at high risk for suicide. We also have Poughkeepsie Performing Arts. They do dance and performing arts at the building. The Poughkeepsie Library District opened the first library branch on the north side of Poughkeepsie in our building last year. It's the Sadie Peterson Delaney African Roots Library. Sadie Peterson Delaney was a famous African-American woman who went to school in the city of Poughkeepsie in our building. Our building was the former city of Poughkeepsie High School. She went to school there, and she went on to become a famous librarian who created what is known as bibliotherapy. She would work with veterans in hospitals to read to them, and that would help heal them. And so we, for many years, had the Sadie Peterson Delaney African Roots Library in the Family Partnership Center, and it was a volunteer-led library. And last year, the Poughkeepsie Library District took it on and renovated it and revamped it. It's like a beautiful, fun. You have to come to the building. You'd love it. Beautiful space. And now we have a spot where the kids can come and sit with books, right? How important is that? Like, if you are not somebody that grew up with books in your home, your success in life could be impacted, right? There's plenty of research about that. So we just let kids come in and exist with books. And my mother was a librarian, so I happen to find so much peace and good feelings when I'm in a library, because I remember going to work with her, right, and playing library. So I love to just go in there and just sit with the books and smell them. And the kids can come, they can take out a book, they can take it home, they can read. Fathers can come read to their kids, right? It provides opportunity. So when I talk about, when you walk into our building, you are, met with services that can help you if you're in crisis, but also met with services that can help you thrive, help you enrich your life. And one thing we're actually doing now is we have a pretty large capital campaign going on. So we're trying to raise close to $12 million that will help us to do some very needed repairs to the building. So our building is 110 years old. And not only do we have critical repairs, like things like crumbling or asbestos abatement, but we want to create the most dignified and respectful experience for our clients. And so when you walk into our doors, you have to be met with feelings of welcome, comfort, safety. There's something, I don't know if you've heard of it, it's called the broken window theory. Have you heard of that? Mm-hmm. Basically, it's a body of research that says that when there are dilapidated physical structures in a community, that it sends the message to those that live in the community that they don't matter, right? So that if you're constantly walking down your street and you're seeing broken windows and dilapidated buildings, you internalize this feeling of no one cares.
Right.
And, we are committed to showing people that we care, right? So that when you see what was a fairly dilapidated, I'm not going to call it dilapidated, it's our building, but it needed work and it needed to inspire feelings of hope. And I'll tell you a story. Last year I was walking into our building and, it's an old school building, so it looks just like a school. And we have these big concrete stairs. And for years, these stairs have just been like cracked and crumbling. And we've tried like every type of patch. Like I've seen like 10 iterations of patches in my 10 years. And I was walking into the building and I saw this toddler that was like running up and down our stairs. It was like 8:00 in the morning. And, toddlers do that. And then there was a woman sitting and she had a baby in her arms. And I noticed the toddler had only one shoe on. She had like one little red shoe on. And look, I know how toddlers can lose their shoes. So I was like, I wanted to help mom. So I was like looking around, seeing if I could find the shoe. And when I looked down, I saw that mom had no shoes on. And so, something I always do is I like to be part of what we do. And so I sat down next to her and I just, said like, how's it going? Is there something I can help you with? And she, after a while, I learned that she had the night before awoken to her, the father of her child, her boyfriend, with his hands around her neck. And she woke up out of a dead sleep. He was strangling her and he was drunk and he was accusing her of sleeping with her boss or something. And her baby was sleeping in the bassinet and her 2-year-old was in the bed with her. And so she this had happened before. He was abusive. And every time it had happened, she knew how to de-escalate him. Like she felt, she knew how to keep herself safe, right? However it meant to de-escalate him. But this night felt very different. And she felt he was more aggressive than typical. And when he lunged for the bassinet, she said to herself, like, if I don't get out tonight, he's going to kill us. Like, I won't have the chance. So she, in a rush of adrenaline, got herself up off the bed, knocked him to the ground, picked up her 2-year-old, got the baby out of the bassinet, ran down the stairs. And as her 2-year-old was like groggy, waking up from a sleep and, hearing the screams and scared, she started crying and said, like, Mommy, I'm not allowed to go outside without my shoes. So at the, threshold of the door, she reached down and grabbed one little red shoe and ran into the night. And she knew about the Family Partnership Center. She knew that there were services there that could help her. So she spent the night, making her way to us, sheltering her babies from the cold. And here she was. She was sitting on our doorstep at 8:00 in the morning, and I was looked down at her bare feet, and they were like on this cracked and crumbled sidewalk. And I was like, is this person going to know that they came to the right place? Like, are they being sent the message where we care, or are they being sent the message nobody cares, right? And that was the moment that I was like, we're doing it, right? We got to raise $12.5 million, but we are making this building what our clients deserve, so that when you make, like, that woman, what a true survivor. She had overcome every hurdle to survive, literally survive, her basic maternal and human instinct to survive. She did it. Well, now was our time, right, to make her realize that she came to the right place and that we were here to help her. And so I always think, like, when I think about the $12.5 million that we have to raise, it's very stressful, but I think about those red shoes, and I think about how they, just symbolize for this family, like, their darkest moment, but also this very hopeful time for them of this new beginning, and how we can be the catalyst for that. And so we have to make every effort to make our building like the most amazing hug, right, that you could get when you walk into our doors, and that you came to the right place, that we care, and people here will help you, right? People, when you walk through our doors, you're going to be helped, right? You're going to feel dignified and respected. So that's my long-winded version to say, if you'd like to help us get to our $12.5 million goal, there's lots of opportunity, and you can find more information about our services on our website, which is familyservicesny.org. So that's familyservicesny.org. And so there's so many ways to get involved. And I always like to tell people, like, become part of our family, right? You can work for us. You can volunteer. You can attend our events. You can donate. There's so many ways to be part of our family. And it really is. It's the best family. So
I think it's such a good segue into what I was going to ask you too about fundraising, which is so important. But I want to just kind of like note a few things here in this story that you shared, because we started with safety, and you spoke about how the community respects the work that you guys do. And because of that respect, you are safe in your community. And a quick little add-on to that story is my mother worked for the Board of Ed, New York City Board of Ed, for over 30 years, retired there, and still works in the New York City Board of Ed. She's just tremendous. You talk about inspiration, inspiring our children. She inspires me. She still continues to do the work. She just received an award in her community for the work that she does. So that, your kids are going to do the work. Don't worry. But growing up, she worked in a very hard school district in Queens, in St. Albans, Queens. And people would be afraid to walk into that building. And my mother worked in that building for years as a teacher, as an administrator, and was very well respected. And the reason for it was because of her service to those children. And I know this because as a young boy, she brought me to school with her. I went on a field trip with her. And I remember this day very vividly because I had heard the stories about her school. She came home and told us, like my father, we're at the dinner table, like, here's what happened in the school. This kid did this. And I'm not talking about like passing bad notes. I'm talking about like violence, like real violence and drugs and gun violence and all this other stuff happening in her school and to these children. I mean, she served a community. Her school was in a community very similar to the ones that you serve. And but she brought me to the school. And I remember the kids seeing me, and I looked very differently than them, and seeing me and saying, that's Mrs. E's kid. He's good. Like, he's safe. Like, nobody go near him. Nobody touch him. Nobody bother him. And I remember playing Legos with some of these kids, because I always had my little Lego briefcase, and playing Legos with them and going on the field trip with them and them embracing me and taking care of me. And I'm saying this for our listeners, of anybody who decides to volunteer for an organization like yours or work in an organization like yours, is that the work that you do, the community sees and realizes. And no matter how hard they are, they realize that you're there to help them. And if it's not for them, it's at least for their kids or for the people that surround them. Because at the end of the day, a lot of the times their violent behavior is to protect their ego, but also to protect their family. And so if you're there to help them and serve their family, then they're like, you know what, you're good. Like, you can come in my neighborhood and you're safe. And so I love that you addressed it that way. I am interested in this fundraising side of things too, right? Because we just talked about the community effort and being a part of the community and embedding ourselves in the community. But on the other side of that, it's so important to raise funds and raise awareness. And it's hard, it's challenging because like on one end, you're sharing this beautiful story. Well, it's beautiful in that you share it and that she found safety. But you're sharing the story about this woman who had to flee her home in the middle of the night to save her family, right? And we think, well, what's 12 million going to do to help her? But it's about the dignity. And I think about my grandmother used to say this to us when we would donate clothes and everything. It's like, don't donate the clothes with holes in it. Mm. They need to be dignified. Donate the clothes that you just maybe don't wear or outgrew. But the clothes with holes in it goes to the garbage. They need to be dignified. And so how do we create places of dignity for them? How do we give them the services that they need? Well, that's through money. It's through raising capital. It's through getting fundraising events going so that we can give them new clothes, not just used clothes, but how about new clothes? How about new books? How about new services? And so I'd love to hear more about these galas and these fundraising events and how they're able to impact the community.
Yeah. So, in the simplest of terms, we have, a budget every year and we get a tremendous amount of funding from government, foundation, other grants, right? We are like grant writing machines. But there are things that grant dollars or government dollars won't fund, right? And so there is always this gap in our budget each year that we have to fill with fundraising dollars, right? And so we fundraise for different purposes, right? There's fundraising that allows our lights to stay on and our business to run, and then there's fundraising that can be specific for capital improvements, right? That's that $12.5 million goal I referenced, and then there's fundraising that can be for specific programs as well. So, for example, we have a teen center. Our teen center operates every evening from 4 to 9. We're there as a safe space for the kids to go when they leave the high school and middle school in the city of Poughkeepsie. We know that if they don't have a safe space, they may be unsafe, right? So we are here for them when they need us. We are a drop-in center, and they can come and have access to a place where they feel like they belong, right? When you don't have access to belonging as a child, you find a place to belong, and that might be to a gang or to an area that's not safe or productive. So they come to our building. We have a beautiful gym that was one of the areas we raised capital for. We were able to redo our gym. The gym was like in shambles. I mean, it was not a dignified experience for the kids. There was no AC. The bathrooms didn't work. The bleachers were, dangerous. Now it's like this beautiful gym facility, and the kids just come in with wonder, and their eyes get big, and they get to play, and it's jam-packed with kids from the time school closes till 9 o'clock at night, weekends, summer. So that is a big opportunity. And then we give youth a place to have dinner each night. We serve them dinner. We have a family dinner. We do homework. We have actually a state-of-the-art music studio that we built with support from generous donors in the city of Poughkeepsie, where they can come produce albums. We have an engineer that comes in and works with them. They do podcasting. So we actually do a very innovative therapy module called hip hop therapy. And that is an innovative model of therapy, which recognizes the very significant impact that hip hop culture has on individuals and community transformation. And we know that the kids that we work with do, really value hip hop and connect with it. So hip hop therapy, kids will say things in their music or in their raps that they won't tell us. So having the opportunity for them to go into a music studio and close the doors and feel their feels through their music is a really special opportunity. So we work with youth to do the hip hop therapy. And so, that our teen program is something that is very challenging to find funding for. There's not a lot of government dollars out there for it. So that's an area where we always, ask for donors to give to. But because our services are so vast, there's something for everyone. There really is. We often hear from youth groups that want to do something. Well, we have a food pantry. So if you want to do a food drive or a basic need drive, right? Diapers, formula, pads, tampons, right? Toothpaste, all of this stuff that when a victim of domestic violence leaves their home with nothing, right? They need something. Another thing that, in talking about dignified experience, one of the partners in our building is Dutchess Outreach. So in our building, we have the lunchbox, which does hot meals, lunch and dinner, and also a food pantry. Now, there is a historical model for a food pantry, and that is that you come into the food pantry and you get, the volunteers there pack up a bag and they give you your bag and you go. Well, we were finding, maybe the person didn't want peas, so they leave their peas like on the side of the road as soon as they leave. Dutchess Outreach has converted their food pantry to be a dignified experience. Now you come in and you get a shopping cart. You get to go around and you pick your food, right? What a simple concept that just provides such a more dignified human experience for a person. So it's little things like that, but it's not without support. We need support from the community. So our $12.5 million goal that we had for our capital campaign, we've raised $8.1 million.
Wow!
Yeah.
Congratulations!
So if you drive,
awesome.
if you'll drive past our building, you'll see some of the construction that's already going on. So that, but we have a lot of work left to do there. And then, like I said, we have our gala coming up, and those funds will go to support that, budgetary gap. People don't realize all the time that nonprofits have to run a business.
Right.
People just think of us, you're the nonprofits, but we have to run a business, right? Mm-hmm. We need an HR department. We need an accounting department. We need maintenance, right? We need to run a business. And that's the things it is hard to raise funds for, right? Yeah. But without that business, our doors close, right? And we can't serve the community.
And you serve so many more by running it like a business. I mean, we have my family's non-for-profit Forgotten Children of Haiti, which I speak about so often, has never been run as a business. It's always been run as more of like a fundraising organization, which many non-for-profits are run that way. But when you look at it in contrast to the St. Luke Foundation, which is one of the non-for-profits in Haiti that we support through FCH, which is run a little bit more like a business, they are able to raise more capital and get grant writers on staff and be able to raise so much more to where they were able to build an entire community in Haiti that surrounds Father Rick, and that's who FCH pretty much supports. And they started after us. So I think that just talks to what you're saying there, and that it needs to be run as a business, and you need to have fundraisers, and you need to have donors, and you need to have a gala to, that, and that's kind of why I asked this question. My mother, the award that my mother attended, the award ceremony that my mother attended was a gala, and it was for her impact in the Haitian community, both in New York City and abroad, and it's from the MIPO, and I don't know exactly what it stands for. But my brother was asking me about this gala, and he said, "Well, what were your impressions of it?" And because he's younger and he's just interested in my thoughts on it, and the thought of, well, you're throwing a gala, but these people are in need, and what is the purpose of it? And what I was expressing to him, and I'd love for you to kind of jump on here, is that it's so important to not just showcase, but we were talking about before when we were talking about our employees, acknowledge. It's so important to acknowledge our community members who are doing the work and acknowledge the work. Because when we make that acknowledgement and we have this gala, it's not just acknowledging them. They're bringing in their family and friends. They're bringing in their community to this gala. And we talk about dignifying. We're bringing them to this gala where everybody gets to dress up, and it's fun and it's entertaining. And there was musicians. It was really done so beautifully. There was musicians. There was a ventriloquist. There was so many different elements to it that made it fun and engaging. But at the same time, we were learning about the work. And in that, well, if I don't attend that gala, if my mother, as a community member who works in that community and has been working with MIPO for so many years, I didn't know about MIPO. But because she received that award, because I went to that gala, because I met other individuals there, because I was impacted by the work, I'm sharing it right now on this podcast, right? So just think about that just happening right now organically.
Right.
And I'm so interested in you maybe sharing a little bit more about that, about the importance of these galas and sharing them in the community to not just the people that are going to go to City of Poughkeepsie for a barbecue cookout on a Saturday, who might not attend that, but might attend a gala at wherever you're holding it.
Yeah. And, it's just what you said, right? People that might, and this is how I feel like, people that might never care about that, 13-year-old kid that walks through our door that needs a safe space that day, someone who might never care about that gets to care about that at that event, right? Gets to learn about us, be inspired by us. And listen, nonprofits don't like doing events.
It's hard.
It's a lot of work.
It's hard. With
very few staff. And, if we just had like maybe 10 or 11 people that gave us $100,000 a year,
be good.
We'd be fine. We'd do away with the events. Yep. But because we do them, it is a good opportunity to, just highlight and say thanks to people in the community. And raise awareness, right? And, that's really what we try to do. So it's interesting. We have events that raise funds and then awareness. And we every year do this event that is called Walk a Mile. And it's a national event called Walk a Mile in Her Shoes. We've done it here in Poughkeepsie for over 10 years. And that event raises awareness about gender-based violence. And essentially it's men come to walk a mile in women's shoes, quite literally. And it's just this show of solidarity, right? Mm-hmm. Women can walk too, but men walk in high heels. And we raise money, and it's fun. But this year we actually, we're not doing it because we don't have the staffing power to pull it off again. So instead, I'm doing something crazy. Do you want to know what it is?
Yeah.
You're the first person I'm telling.
Oh my goodness.
Okay.
So cool.
This will play after it happens. But this September, I am going to run 50 miles and in an effort to raise $50,000 for family services, and most importantly, share 50 stories from our clients, because I want people to, for better lack of a term, run with our clients, right? I want them to understand and hear and be inspired by the values behind the people we serve, right? Because it's easy to look and say, pass judgment on our clients, but it's quite a different story to read their words and read their experiences. And, why am I running 50 miles? Well, it's just who I am as a person. But when you run 50 miles, you go through these experiences, right?
All in one shot, you didn't do it?
Oh, yeah. One day. You go through these experiences, right? You're at the beginning, you're feeling very hopeful, and then, you feel very not hopeful, right? And then you feel maybe you're inspired, or maybe you have community that helps you get through, and then your inner deepest resilience has to come in, right? And those last, 10 miles, your inner resilience, your deepest strengths, and your greatest feelings of hope and optimism are what's carrying you through, right? And that is what our clients go through, right? So how do we, so I, through this platform, want to share that experience with our supporters, right? People that care about what we do, or maybe don't, but might now, and just get the word out and hear the words of our clients.
Are you running it alone, or are you getting a group together?
I have, I'm going to attempt to get a group. I do have one person that I know will do it with me, right? But I'm
interested.
Okay, you're in. High five. Yes. So if you're in, then you're in. I mean, if you're in.
I'm scared right now because I've never run 50 miles. I've never run more than 13. We did a half marathon. But I was just thinking about the book Never Finished by David Goggins. Did you hear about it? No, you don't know it. David Goggins, it's certainly a book or a person for you to learn about. Grew up in an abusive household, inner city and all that. And long story short, became a ultra runner and an ultra runner is doing 100-mile runs and so on, and speaks to a lot of what you just spoke about. And there's more to his story that only because of time right now I'm not going to get too involved in, but he does your community. He resonates with your community.
Yeah, and I'm going to have to read it.
He certainly does. But the book never finishes. The one that comes to mind here. Oh my goodness! You just made me commit to a 50-mile run. This is incredible.
You see what happens when you can get inspired? Like, listen. An hour, and here you are, lifelong supporter.
Oh my goodness! All right, well, I mean, I got to do it now. The work that you do is tremendous. We're very aware of that, and I'm very appreciative of you coming on today. As I conclude, I always like to have a quote that you have shared, and you shared it with me. And I can't find it in my notes here, but we did kind of start with it, which had. Oh, there it was. You did. You spoke. I knew you shared it before. Start by believing, and we can have it all. In terms of those quotes and what they mean to you, and we touched on a lot of that. As we wrap up here, final messages for others out there. I know that you talk about that you're helping people in their darkest moments, and that you're just trying to help them find their light. What can you share in terms of that?
Yeah, be fearless. Is a really important motto I have for myself.
Wow.
I think to myself almost daily, like, what would I do if I wasn't afraid? Like, how would I operate if I wasn't afraid? And then I also, in the Jewish heritage, there's a phrase, tikkun olam, and that means repair the world. And that's what that's how I operate daily, is just what can I do to repair the world? So I encourage people, if you're in a career or in somewhere in your life where you're not lit and energetic and compassionate, I never work a day in my life. Mind you, I work 60 plus hours a week, but I never work a day in my life, So, but there's ways to fill that cup, even if it's not a career change, right? There are ways to get involved. There are ways to be inspired. So I would tell you that there's opportunity for everyone. And if I have inspired you, I just encourage you to reach out to me. Like, I'd love to talk about what we do and talk about how you can be part of that.
Cool. And how can people reach out to you it'll be in the show notes, but of course for our audio listeners?
Sure. Well, our website has my contact information. So that's familyservicesny.org. I'm trying to get better on social media. I'm not great. So maybe by the time this is out, I'll have a better social media presence that you could find me. But
is there a platform that you would prefer people to contact you on if you get better at one of them? Which would be the first that you're looking to get better at? Let's put it that way.
I guess LinkedIn, is that a thing? Okay.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I found you on LinkedIn. Okay. I saw that you're not active there. But
I am the worst millennial. So let's just say that.
What I've learned as an entrepreneur and a business owner now, and I really appreciate learning this, is that it's not about being on social media. It's about doing social media, is what Brennan Burchard says. He says, I'm not on social media. I do social media. And what he means by that is, like, it's not about going on and scrolling and seeing what everybody else is up to and commenting on all their posts. That's a great way to grow your followership and all that other stuff if that's your goal. But it's about just doing it in terms of, you can communicate with me there, you can find me there, I can communicate with you there, and I can share things with you there to be where you are, right? Where your audience might be, so they can learn from. We're about to do an IG Live anyway, so you're gonna be on Instagram whether you like it or not.
All right, yes, and please do check out our Family Services Instagram, and then I also do have an Instagram. It's Leah Feldman Community. So
very cool. Well, it's been great having you on. See, you thought this was going to be like just a 20-minute show and we'd be wrapped up, but no, you had so much to share, and I think it was just so important for you to share the work that you do, but also the reason why you do it. And I love how you were able to articulate that. One last thing for you and for our audience to learn about you, which you may know or may not know, is, did you ever Google your name, Leah Feldman?
Yes. What's up there, though?
Well, there's not about you, but there's another strong woman. I forget what she did exactly, but I was reading, because I was trying to look you up and I was trying to find things, and I found her and I was just like, who is this woman? And she's like, she was a strong Russian immigrant who, essentially fought for the rights of others.
Yeah.
And so it's like, you have these shoes were meant for you to wear.
I know.
And it's incredible.
And it's all like in a name. You know, when I found out when I had my baby girl, I asked, I'm very spiritual. So I said to myself, how can I infuse all of the power I can into her? And so I named her Athena after the great warrior goddess. And she's also named after her great aunt. And then she, who's a very powerful woman. And then her middle name is Jolene. And that's a combination of her two grandmothers, Joanne and Darlene. And so every powerful woman force I could find, I put right into her name. So she got to live up to that. So yeah, it is all in the name. You're right.
That's so cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today. It's been wonderful.
It's been great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for listening to The Michael Esposito Show. For show notes, video clips, and more episodes, go to michaelespositoinc.com/podcast. Thank you again to our sponsor, Den 10 Insurance Services, helping businesses get the right insurance for all their insurance needs. Visit den10.io to get a quote. That's DENTEN.io. And remember, when you buy an insurance policy from Den10, you're giving back on a global scale. This episode was produced by Uncle Mike at the iHeart Studios in Poughkeepsie. Special thanks to Lara Rodrian for the opportunity and my team at Michael Esposito Inc.